Yesterday we talked about yogis who fear samsara or who regard samsara as fearful, hence trying to extinguish all kilesas by possessing a mind guarded by mindfulness. Every time one should be able to activate mindfulness so that the noting mind is locked on to the object or objects. So, which kind of individual is possessed of such constant mindfulness without gap? The answer is only the arahants can possess such kind of constant mindfulness. As for the arahants, every time they act by body, speech and mind. Every time they do things physically, every time they do by word of mouth, every time they think with the mind, they are always mindful. They never act without mindfulness. They never act by way of physical deed without mindfulness. They never speak without mindfulness, nor do they think without mindfulness. And in order to reach that stage, one must attain the final supramundane path of arahantship. So that's why it has been praised in the text about these arahants, and it is something for us to emulate. And this is how the text have praised the arahants, such as at the time of walking, that is stepping as right step, left step, or the movement of the steps, such as lifting, moving and breathing. Every step can be divided into 6 stages. The arahants are mindful. And while he is asleep, that means not necessary to be fast asleep. It's better described as even if they are lying on the bed or at the time of waking up, the arahant is always mindful. Arahant possessing a mind guarded by mindfulness. So such kind of situation cannot be possessed by ordinary person. It can only happen in the arahants. So it is to be understood that arahant is mindful all the time, except at the time when one is fast asleep. That means he is mindful when he was going to bed or going to sleep, and at the time of waking up. Of course, when one is fast asleep, one cannot be mindful. Instead, one will be living with bhavanga, so-called bhavanga chitta. That means life continuum of consciousness. So here it is meant that the arahant is mindful all the time except when he is fast asleep. And here it is also to be remembered that he is mindful in every physical behavior, verbal behavior and mental behavior. In this way he is mindful all the time. So when we say that arahant is always mindful, it is not to be taken that this mindfulness comes down, falls down from the sky. In fact, he has had this mindfulness, or it is a result of his practice since the time of his being an anagami, that is realization of the third supramundane path, and also by stages, this state of Anagami also was a result of his condition, his practice at the time of his second, the realizer of the second path, that is Sagaragami. And also, as for the Sagaragami, the mindfulness that he was able to do was a result of the practice at the time of Sorapanna or Sorapati Mega or Sorapanna, that is the stage of the first subramundane path. And also, to realize the result of mindfulness at the stage of Sorapanna, one must have practiced before Sorapanna, that is at the time of Purujana, ordinary worldling. So in this way, one must have practiced by stages from the stage of Purujana, ordinary being, to the stage of Arahant. So when one becomes Sorapanna, that is the one who realizes the first subramundane path, have practiced mindfulness since the stage of Purujana, ordinary being. So as ordinary being, one has got to activate mindfulness. Of course, he or she will not be able to be mindful all the time whenever he or she is acting by body, speech and mind. Not every time. And of course, as a Sorapanna, even as a Sorapanna, he or she will not be so mindful, or his or her mindfulness will not be so steadfast like that of the higher individuals, namely Sagaragami, Anagami and Arahant. He or she will not be so much steadfast, so much mindful as these individuals. But as a Purujana, one has got to try one's best to be mindful. And once one realizes the first supramundane path, that is the stage of Sorapanna, then one will not fall into the states of loss, or one will not commit deeds, gross forms of deeds, which will pull you down to the states of loss. That is the difference between Sorapanna and Purujana. So at this stage, one will be able to control oneself so that one will not be afflicting oneself nor others. As a Purujana, ordinary being, that is without realizing subramundane path, one's mind will be changeable. Although one may be good at this moment, one may not be so good at another moment. So because one is not all the time mindful, one may be committing afflictive, transgressive actions, afflicting others. So to become a Sorapanna, one has got to practice since the time of a Purujana to be mindful. Now the yogis are practicing to realize this path, that is the path of first subramundane, by activating mindfulness in accordance with the saying, Sadarakena Chitasa Samanagato Hoti. One should possess a mind guarded by mindfulness. So every time one acts, one should be able to be mindful, and at least one should try one's best to be mindful. So we have to take up the practice to make it perfect. Then one will be able to activate mindfulness so that the mindfulness will be locked onto the object in a wonderful manner. In accordance with the Buddha's advice, one should guard one's mind with vigilant mindfulness of whatever arises. Now this advice is essential for everybody. Also this expression, Satencha Bhikkhave, Kwaham Bhikkhave, Savatikam Vadami, namely, sati, mindfulness, is required everywhere. And every time you move or you change postures, in all the 4 postures, whether you bend or stretch, even to the extent of closing or opening your eyes, wearing clothes, even when one goes to the toilet. So every time one should be mindful in accordance with the Buddha's admonishment. Whoever appreciates, whoever values one's life, or whoever wants to uplift one's value of life, this is very important. In the worldly life, your life may be of high standard in terms of educational qualifications, in terms of occupation, status, or wealth. However, life cannot be said to be fulfilled. Life cannot be said to be substantial. Because if one cannot purify one's mind, one will not be able to control one's physical and verbal behaviors, not to afflict oneself or others. So how much one may be wealthy or educated or intellectual, if one cannot control one's mind, one will not be able to control one's physical and verbal behaviors. One will not be able to conduct oneself in the right way, not to be able to behave like a human being, not to be able to possess like a human being, not to mention to become above average human being. So it is very important, as becomes a human being, one should possess a conduct which makes oneself a worthy human being, and also to be able to possess human mentality and to be above average human being. So one should find a method and strive to uplift one's life, valuing, appreciating one's life. One should be able to purify one's physical, verbal, mental behaviors so that they become graceful, cultured, tamed, peaceful, and lovable, which is essential for everybody. When we say that yogis should guard their mind with vigilant mindfulness of whatever arises, it means that we are to first establish this sati, mindfulness, let it happen as a first thing, initiate it. Let us say, after knowing the correct method of practice, you go to your own place, sit down, watch the abdomen, breathe normally, and note rising and falling. As the abdomen rises, you apply your sati, that is, you initiate it. You are establishing it. And when falling takes place also, you apply your noting mind to establish sati, and thus you are initiating it. And this goes on for every rising and falling. You cause your sati, make your sati to become more and more developed, more and more cultivated, and more greater and greater. In this way, you strengthen your power of guarding your mind. As your protection is good, as we say from areka, that is the quality of sati, mindfulness, because you are protected, or your mind is protected, you are blocking the path, hindering, preventing the impurities from arising. That is avarana. You are blocking or hindering. And because you are preventing or blocking the path to impurities, you are said to be secure. That means your mind becomes secure from bondage. That is kauti. And as you become secure, you are free from danger, harm, or the bondage of impurities. And as you are free from such bondage, you are bound to be peaceful and happy, not being agitated or afflicted by impurities or afflictive emotions such as greed, hatred, and other impurities. In this way, you are developing sati, mindfulness, every second of the time, and this peace sati is accumulated. You are accumulating moments of peace sati, so that this will become a cause for happiness, which excels manifold the pleasures of senses or sensual pleasures. When we say this expression, one must guard one's mind with vigilant mindfulness of whatever arises. Whatever arises means every time we see with our eye, we hear with our ears, we smell with our nose, and we taste with our tongue, and we touch with our body. That is what is meant by whatever arises. Whenever you move in all your manners, there are bound to be this touching sensation. That is, when you move your hands or limbs, when you move your head, or when you open your eyes. Suppose you are looking at something, watching at something, you may feel stiffness and tension in your eyelids because you are just looking at something continuously, and you want to be relieved from this stiffness or tension. So you close or wink your eyes, and you move in this way. So you feel the movement. And before that, you felt a stiffness and tension in your eyelids. Now, because you close your eye, you are relieved of this situation. You feel comfortable. So by doing so, you are said to be experiencing the feeling in the body. As for the mind, it is thinking thoughts, ideas all the time except when one is fast asleep. Once one wakes up, one is bound to think of thoughts and ideas until again these thoughts will stop once one falls asleep. In this way, the whole day mind is working, good or bad. There are many thoughts, and as the mind is not controlled or guarded with sati, in most cases one will be thinking evil thoughts. So every time one thinks, one's mind should be guarded by mindfulness. What is the immediate benefit? The immediate benefit is one's mind will be protected from these afflictive emotions or impurities called kilesas, such as raga, dosa, moha. If one is guarded, whether in real life, one will not be oppressed or harmed by bad heads such as thieves or robbers and enemies. And because one is guarded, protected, they cannot enter your premises. If, on the other hand, you are not guarded, you are not protected, these enemies are bound to enter and oppress you and even kill you. That is because you are not guarded at all, or even if you are guarded or protected, your protection is not so strong or secure. So if you are protected, then no harm will come to you. Like this example, one should be guarded with mindfulness of every arising at the 6 sense doors. But one will be only be able to be mindful all the time. When one becomes an arahant, one will be fulfilled with mindfulness completely. Until then, we have to build up our practice of mindfulness gradually. Just as when Sayadaw was young, studying as a student, in the beginning he had to just try his best to remember word by word, then from one word to 2 words, 3 words, and so on, building up his memory to the memory of phrases and sentences. Later, as he was able to build up his memory, he was able to do things properly. So we need to practice to be able to perfect ourselves. First of all, you have to, when you are studying as a student, you have to try to memorize or pronounce these words word by word, like A, B, C, and so on. And it is better to pronounce it so that you can hear your own voice and find out whether your pronunciation is correct or not. Then you'll be able to do it correctly. So do with the practice of mindfulness. When you are noting, activating your mindfulness of every arising object, you are labeling, so to speak, the natural phenomena, so that you are able to distinguish them, observe them distinctly, clearly, like pronouncing the words one by one, so as to be able to pronounce them correctly. Just as when we are studying lessons, first we start with word by word, phrase by phrase, sentence by sentence. Later on, with the practice, we are able to read or study these lessons fluently. So do with the practice of mindfulness. First of all, one has got to build up sati, mindfulness, then cultivate, develop it, and make it greater and greater. So when we are noting every arising object in the body, we do it first. Note one object. As you note one object, you'll be seeing many objects in a row. Like when you're reading one thing, you know many things. Just as it is said that with the power of mindfulness, your vision becomes intense and panoramic, widened. That is, by noting one thing, you are knowing many things. And in this way, your vision, your awareness becomes widened. Such things happen when you are able to perfect your experience in due course with the practice of mindfulness. In this way, as you are activating mindfulness, so that your preceding mindfulness, noting mind is continuous with the succeeding noting mind, and the noting mind is flowing like a current, you are said to be well guarded, because your noting mind is continuous without leaving any gap, so as to allow these dangerous to harmful elements from entering. There will be no chance of these impurities arising in a stream of consciousness. There will be no chance of the mind becoming greedy or mind becoming there will be no hatred arising. And since you are knowing the true nature of these things noted, you are knowing things correctly, so there will be no chance of this illusion or lack of clarity arising in your stream of consciousness. By not giving a chance, you are said to be overcoming these impurities, and these impurities will not have any entrance, any chance to enter, because there's no entrance, there's no gap to allow these impurities from entering. In this way, you are said to be secure from bondage. Then you will not be agitated or afflicted by raga, craving or lust. You will not, because you are not agitated or afflicted by craving, you are said to be peaceful. Because you are not afflicted or agitated by anger or hatred, you are feeling peaceful, subdued. Because you are not agitated by delusion, you are said to be peaceful. Hence, this peace, santi, called santi, which is in this case tathanga santi, temporary or part-time peace, has to be accumulated moment by moment, so as to become greater and greater, larger and larger, more and more cultivated and developed, and progressing along the path of insight knowledge to the majority of the practice, realizing the path consciousness of this is the first path consciousness. Then you will be free from the gross forms of internal enemies. This will be in accordance with what we say in the West, that namely, practice makes perfect. Because we are practicing by guarding our mind, applying mindfulness, we are building up these mental energies or mental powers in our stream of, so that they will grow powerful in our stream of consciousness. We are cultivating them. We are developing it so that it will be of high quality mindfulness, sati, instead of being ordinary quality sati, mindfulness. At this point, this meaning of satipatthana comes in. Namely, this sati or satipatthana is not ordinary sati or mindfulness. Because of this word patthana together with sati, this patthana gives special meaning to this mindfulness. It is a kind of mindfulness which is steadfastly locked on to the object of attention. This kind of mindfulness is a steadfast, high quality mindfulness instead of being low quality mindfulness. So if the mindfulness is not of high quality, then there will be no guarantee of success in the practice of meditation. This satipatthana will be discussed in detail both from theoretical and practical aspects tomorrow.